I heard it before I saw it, a whisper. Soft, too soft, almost like the wind squeezing through a crack in the wall. But there was no wind, and I had locked all the windows. I never liked staying home alone, but I had gotten used to it. Mom's night shifts at the hospital meant I was on my own most nights. It wasn't so bad most of the time. Our house wasn't huge, but it was old, built decades before I was born. Creaky floors, narrow hallways, and the basement I refused to go near. It had this eerie way of feeling too quiet sometimes, like it was holding its breath. Even the walls felt like they had secrets. It was a one-story place, but the layout made it feel bigger. The living room opened into a small kitchen, and the hallway led to 3 bedrooms. Mine, Mom's, and the guest room that no one ever really used. At night, that hallway always looked darker than it should, like the shadows stretched just a little too far. We had only lived in this house for about 3 months. Before that, we were in an apartment across town, smaller but safer, or at least it felt that way. Mom had wanted a fresh start, something closer to work, something with more space. At first, I was excited about the move. A new place, a bigger room, a backyard. But something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it. It wasn't just the creaky floors or the way the old house settled at night. It was the feeling that I was being watched. The first time I noticed him was a week after we moved in. A man, standing at the end of our street. Not doing anything. Just standing there. I saw him through my bedroom window. It was late, past midnight. At first, I thought maybe he was just a neighbor, maybe someone out for a late night smoke. But he wasn't moving, not even shifting his weight. Just standing in the glow of the streetlight facing our house, I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe he wasn't even looking at us. Maybe it was just some guy waiting for a ride. But the next night he was there again. Same place. Same eerie stillness that I wanted to tell Mom, but I didn't want to freak her out. She was already stressed with work, with the move, with everything. So I kept it to myself. I started closing my curtains earlier, trying to ignore the way my stomach twisted every time I thought about him. Then, one night, he was gone, and that's when the real nightmare began. I froze, my fingers tightening around the TV remote. My heart pounded in my chest, a sound filling my ears. I muted the television. Silence swallowed the room whole. I was alone. Or at least I should have been. The house was dark except for the bluish glow of the TV screen, which flickered against the walls. Outside, the street was empty. Mom was at work, pulling another night shift at the hospital. She wouldn't be home for hours. It was just me, a bowl of half-eaten popcorn and the ever-growing pit in my stomach. Then I heard it again, see loser this time. Come here. I want to see you. A whisper. Male. Low. I couldn't breathe. The voice had come from the hallway. A shiver crawled up my spine. My mind raced. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe I was too caught up in my horror movie marathon. But I hadn't imagined it. No, I was sure. I turned my head slowly toward the hallway, my breath shallow. The darkness stretched endlessly, swallowing whatever lay beyond my sight. My bedroom was down there. So was Mom's. The guest room. The bathroom. All doors shut tight. Or were they? I squinted, heart hammering against my ribs. Something was different. My bedroom door, it was slightly ajar. Just a crack. I didn't leave it open. I knew I didn't. Go. Lock yourself in the bathroom. Call 911. That was what I should have done. What any sane person would do. But I didn't move. Instead, I just stared. Stared at that slightly open door. Stared into the sliver of darkness peeking from behind it. My hands felt clammy. My legs felt like they weren't mine anymore. Then, ever so slowly, the door creaked open another inch. I choked on a gasp, scrambling back against the couch. My stomach clenched, and my entire body went rigid. Someone was in there. No. No, no, no. I shot up, phone clutched tight in my sweaty hand. I bolted toward the bathroom, my socks slipping on the wooden floor. As I ran, I felt something, an unbearable, suffocating sensation. Like I was being watched. The kind of feeling that makes the hairs on your arms rise, makes your throat tighten with dread. I swore I could hear breathing. Not my own. Something heavier. Close. Too close, Dot. I threw myself into the bathroom and slammed the door shut, twisting the lock with shaking fingers. The silence in here felt heavier, thicker. My breathing was too loud, too erratic. My stomach was twisting itself into knots. Dot. I pressed my ear against the door, listening, straining, waiting. Silence. Maybe they had left. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was losing it. Then, footsteps. Slow, heavy, purposeful. Coming down the hall. Coming toward me. I told myself it was just my imagination. My hands felt clammy. My legs felt like they weren't mine anymore. The footsteps stopped. Right outside the bathroom door. Dot. I slapped my hand over my mouth, my entire body trembling. I could hear my own pulse thundering in my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to disappear, to wake up, to be anywhere but here. A long silence stretched between us. Me trapped in the bathroom and whatever stood on the other side of the door, then a soft sound. A click. The doorknob. Dot. It turned once. Then again. Testing. The lock held. Dot. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But I didn't. I just stayed there, frozen, fingers still hovering over my phone screen. Then came the whisper. I see you. The breath left my lungs. The voice was right against the door, right on the other side. Like whoever was there had pressed their lips against the wood and whispered it just for me. I see you. I choked down a sob. My fingers finally typed out 911. The call rang once before a voice answered. 911, what's your emergency? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat had locked up. My ears were ringing. The world was spinning. The doorknob rattled again. Harder. More forceful now, like someone was getting impatient. Dot. I forced the words out in a whisper. Someone's in my house. The operator's voice remained calm. Are you in a safe place? I was about to answer when something changed. The air shifted. The presence outside the door was gone. The silence stretched. The heaviness in the air lifted just a little. Dot. I strained my ears. Nothing. Had he left? The operator was still talking, but I barely heard her. I was too focused on the quiet, too focused on the absence of sound where there had been something moments ago, and then a loud bang. The door shook under the impact. I screamed, stumbling back. Another bang. The door shook again. The lock strained. Police are on their way, the operator assured me, her voice controlled. Stay on the line. The banging continued, harder, faster. The door wouldn't hold. It was going to break, and then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Silence. I held my breath. My knees buckled. I gripped the counter for support, my entire body drenched in sweat. Footsteps. Running now, away from the bathroom. Down the hallway toward the front door, a loud crash echoed to the house. Then, nothing. Minutes later, sirens filled the air. The flashing red and blue lights leaked in through the tiny bathroom window. I could hear officers shouting, sweeping through the house. I stayed where I was until a voice, a real human safe voice, called out for me. When I finally opened the door, an officer stood there, his gun drawn, his face lined with concern. You okay? I nodded, but I wasn't okay. I was far from okay. They found the front door wide open. Whoever had been inside was gone, vanished into the night. But the worst part? They found no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no pick locks, no pry doors. Whoever had whispered to me had already been inside the house before I even heard them, and they had a key. I used to think horror movies were exaggerated. That was before I lived through one. It happened on a night that should have been ordinary. I had just put my daughter Lily to bed. She was 2 years old, sweet as could be, and had finally learned to sleep through the night. It was a victory for me as a single mom who worked late shifts and barely got any rest herself. My apartment was small but cozy, a 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. I had lived there for almost a year with no issues. The kind of place where neighbors nodded at each other but never got too close. That night, after tucking Lily in, I curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling through my phone absent-mindedly. The baby monitor sat on the table beside me, its tiny screen flickering in the dim light. The camera was positioned in Lily's nursery, angled towards her crib. A grainy, green-tinged image showed my little girl sleeping peacefully. Then at exactly 11:47 p.m., the screen glitched. Just for a second, a flicker of static, I frowned, leaning in. Lily was still there, curled up in her blanket, but something about the image felt off. I squinted. The shadows in the room seemed different, deeper somehow. And then I noticed it, the closet door. I always left it slightly open, just an inch, because Lily had a habit of crying if it was fully shut. But now, the door was open wider. Much wider, a cold sensation crawled up my spine. I hadn't opened it that far. I sat up straight, my pulse quickening. The apartment was dead silent. I strained my ears, listening for any sign of movement, but all I could hear was the faint hum of the monitor. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I had left the door like that. And then Lily moved. She shifted slightly, pulling her blanket up. But what made my stomach drop wasn't her movement. It was the faint reflection in the mirror across the room. There was a shape behind the crib. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The image was grainy, hard to make out, but there was no mistaking it. A tall, shadowy figure stood against the back wall just beyond the crib. I wanted to believe my eyes were playing tricks on me, that it was some weird trick of the light. But then the figure moved, slow, deliberate, closer. I shot up from the couch so fast I knocked over my wine glass. My first instinct was to scream, but my voice died in my throat. My hands fumbled for my phone, my fingers shaking as I pulled up the camera app, switching to the security feed from the hallway outside Lily's room. Nothing. The hallway was empty. I forced myself to breathe. Maybe, just maybe, the camera had glitched. But then on the monitor, Lily stirred again. And this time, she did something that shattered any last hope I had that this was all in my head. She sat up, looked past the crib, and whispered, "Who's that?" I didn't think. I just ran. The short hallway to her room felt like a mile. My heart slammed against my ribs as I reached the door, my hands shaking as I twisted the knob. The room was dark. Only the soft glow of her nightlight illuminated the space. And Lily, my sweet baby, was sitting up in her crib, wide-eyed, staring at the open closet. It was empty. No one was there. No shadow, no figure. Just rows of tiny clothes and an old box of baby blankets. "Mommy?" Lily's voice was small, confused. Where did he go? My skin went ice cold. I grabbed her and held her tight against my chest, scanning every inch of the room. Nothing was out of place. Nothing except that damn closet door, still open wider than I had left it. I backed out of the room, holding Lily close, my ears straining for any sound. Then I heard it. A soft click. My stomach dropped. That sound, it was the sound of a door unlocking. It came from the front of the apartment. Every instinct in me screamed run. I bolted down the hallway, still clutching Lily, my pulse hammering. As I neared the front door, my breath caught in my throat. The deadbolt was unlocked. I was certain that I had locked it earlier. My hands trembled as I threw the bolt back in place, double-checking it. I stood there, heart pounding, listening to the silence pressing in from the other side of the door. Nothing. But someone had been here. I spent the rest of the night locked in my bedroom with Lily, too afraid to sleep, too afraid to even move. Every creak, every whisper of wind sent my nerves into overdrive. By morning, I convinced myself it had to be exhaustion playing tricks on me. Maybe the monitor glitched. Maybe Lily had a bad dream. That's what I told myself, until I checked the baby monitor footage. At exactly 11:47 p.m., there was static. Then a flicker of the closet door moving, seemingly on its own. Then a shape. A tall, dark figure standing behind the crib. Motionless. Watching. And just before the feed cut out completely, just before the screen went black, the figure turned its head, not to look at Lily, not to look around the room, but to look directly into the camera, and it smiled. I moved out 2 days later. I never figured out who or what was in my apartment that night, but sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, I wonder, did I really get away, or is it still watching? You ever feel like you're being watched? Like someone is right behind you, even though you know there's no one there? That creeping, ice-cold feeling crawling up your spine, warning you to turn around? I used to think it was just paranoia. Until I saw her, it started 3 nights ago. I live alone in a quiet little apartment on the outskirts of town. There's nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom place with a tiny balcony overlooking the parking lot. Most nights it's dead silent. That night was no different. The building itself is old, at least 40 years, if not more. It has that unmistakable air of forgotten history, the kind you can feel in the walls. The ceilings creak even when no one's moving, and the hallways are dimly lit, the kind of yellow light that flickers just enough to make you uneasy. Most of the other tenants keep to themselves, doors always shut, curtains drawn. The town itself has its share of stories. Decades ago, it was a quiet, peaceful place, but something changed. There are rumors. People talk about strange disappearances, whispers of a woman who walks at night, always seen in a flowing white gown, her face hidden by tangled, wet hair. No one knows exactly where she came from, but the most common story goes like this. A woman named Eleanor lived here in the late 1980s. She was a young bride, newly married, excited to start a life with her husband in the very building I now call home. But something went wrong. One stormy night, Eleanor's husband vanished without a trace. Some say he ran away, others say he was taken. But Eleanor never left. She searched for him endlessly, wandering the halls in her white nightgown, knocking on doors, pleading for answers. Then, one night, she was found dead. She had thrown herself from the balcony at the top floor. Her gown, once pristine, was stained with rain and blood, her body twisted on the pavement below. No note. People say she never really left. That she still wanders the building, searching, watching. I had just settled in after work, some Netflix, a glass of wine, and the soft hum of the rain against my window. My phone buzzed. A message from my best friend, Liv. How's it feel living alone? Not too scary, I hope. I smirked, typing back, feels great, except for the ghost in the closet. She sent back a bunch of laughing emojis, and I had locked my phone, rolling my eyes. I had always joked about this place being haunted. I'd hear creaks and see shadows from time to time, but nothing that couldn't be explained away. That night, though, something felt different. I was halfway through my show when I noticed movement outside. My balcony door was closed, the glass reflecting the dim light of my apartment. I sat up straighter, staring. For a split second, I swore I saw a figure standing just beyond the glass. A woman, my heart lurched. I turned sharply, but the balcony was empty. Just rain trickling down the railing. No one was there. I let out a nervous laugh. Just my imagination. Maybe I was more on edge about living alone than I realized. Or maybe I just didn't look long enough. The next night, I saw her again. This time, I was in bed. My laptop balanced on my legs, some crime documentary playing. The rain had stopped, leaving only eerie silence in its wake. Then that feeling came again. The slow, suffocating weight of being watched. I turned my head toward the window and my breath caught in my throat. She was standing on my balcony, a woman, dressed in a long white gown, her face eerily pale, framed by stringy damp hair. Her eyes were hollow, empty, fixed on me. For a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It was as if my entire body had locked up in sheer primal terror. Then I blinked, and she was gone. I shot out of bed, practically tripping over my own feet as I stumbled toward the window. My hands trembled as I pulled back the curtain. The balcony was empty. The railing slick with rain. No footprints. No sign of her, my mind raced. Had someone climbed up? Was it some sick prank? I locked my balcony door, checked every room, every closet, under the bed. Nothing. I didn't sleep that night. By the third night, I was exhausted. I convinced myself it had to be stress, maybe some kind of sleep deprivation-induced hallucination. My mind was playing tricks on me, and then my laptop screen glitched. I was watching a video when static suddenly cut across the screen. My heart skipped a beat. I tapped the keyboard, but the video froze, a distorted image flickering on the screen. It was my reflection. My room. And behind me, a woman in a white gown, standing in the doorway. Watching me dot, I turned so fast my neck cracked. No one was there. My stomach twisted into knots. My eyes flicked back to the laptop, but the screen had returned to normal. I slammed it shut. That was it. I wasn't staying here another night. I packed a bag, grabbed my car keys, and was halfway to the door when my phone rang. The sudden noise made me jump. My hands slick with sweat as I fumbled to answer. "Hello?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. Silence, then a faint crackling whisper, "Don't go." The line went dead. I swear to God, my blood turned to ice dot. I dropped my phone and ran. I didn't look back. I didn't turn off the lights. I just ran. I drove straight to Live's place. I don't even remember getting out of the car. All I know is that when she opened the door, I nearly collapsed into her arms. I told her everything. The woman, the balcony, the voice on the phone. She didn't laugh. She didn't call me crazy. Instead, she grabbed her keys and said, "We're going back." I begged her not to, but she wasn't the type to back down. We got back to my apartment just past midnight. The second I stepped inside, my stomach twisted. Something felt wrong. The air was heavier. The silence deafening. Liv, of course, walked right in like it was nothing. "See? Nothing here." And then the bathroom door slammed shut. We both jumped. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Liv turned the knob. Locked dot, a slow scraping sound came from inside. A whisper followed. "I see you." We ran. I don't even remember locking the door behind me. I only remember getting into the car, peeling out of the parking lot, my entire body trembling. I never went back. The next day, I broke my lease, paid the penalty, packed my things, and left. I didn't take my furniture. Didn't even take my bed. I just wanted out. I still don't know who or what I saw.